My father was everything to me. Everything. And at his funeral, my husband killed him all over again. See? Marcus leaned into my ear while I was standing over my daddy's casket, tears streaming down my face, heart shattered into a million pieces. And he whispered 5 words that changed my life forever. 5 words that made me realize I had been sleeping next to a stranger for 6 years. 5 words that turned my grief into a rage so hot it could burn down everything he ever built. He said, "Finally, now we can live how we were supposed to." Finally. Like my father's death was something he had been waiting for. Like my daddy's last breath was the starting gun for whatever sick race he had been running. I thought I married a man who loved me. Turns out I married a con artist who loved my father's money, and for 8 years he had been waiting, watching, planning for the day my daddy would die so he could take everything. But here's what Marcus didn't know about me. I'm a forensic accountant. I hunt down hidden money and expose fraud for a living. I've sent men to prison for doing exactly what he was trying to do. I've traced millions of dollars through shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake businesses, and I was about to use every single skill I had to destroy him. He thought I was just a grieving widow, too broken, too emotional, too weak to see what was right in front of my face. Baby, he thought wrong. My daddy didn't raise no fool. He raised a detective, a fighter, a woman who knows how to find the truth no matter how deep someone buries it. So let me tell you how I buried my father on a Saturday and buried my husband's entire life by the following Friday. But first, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Click the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. And if you've ever trusted someone who showed you exactly who they really were at the worst possible moment, type "betrayed" in the comments. Let me see how many of us have been through this. Now, let me take you back to the worst day of my life. The day I said goodbye to my daddy and hello to the truth about my husband. My daddy died on a Tuesday. Heart attack. No warning. No goodbye. Just a phone call at 2 in the morning that turned my whole world upside down. James Arthur Carter, 67 years old, self-made millionaire, real estate developer, pillar of the community, the man who raised me by himself after my mama died when I was 12 years old. Gone. Just like that. For 3 weeks, I walked around like a zombie. Couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. The only thing holding me together was Marcus, or at least that's what I thought. The morning of the funeral, I woke up feeling like my chest was caving in, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me human. I just laid there in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I was supposed to get up and say goodbye to my daddy forever. Marcus came in with a cup of tea, set it on the nightstand, sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed my back. "Baby, I know today is going to be hard," he said, "but I'm right here. Whatever you need, you just lean on me." And I believed him. Lord help me, I believed every word. He helped me pick out my dress, the black one with the long sleeves that Daddy always said made me look elegant. He fastened the clasp on the necklace Daddy gave me for my 30th birthday. He drove us to the church because he said I was too emotional to be behind the wheel, and the whole time I kept thinking, thank God I have this man. Thank God I don't have to go through this alone. Greater hope. Baptist church was packed, standing room only. That's how loved my father was. He had built half the homes in that community, employed hundreds of people over the years, donated to every charity, every school fundraiser, every church building fund. When James Carter walked into a room, people stood up, and now they were all there to say goodbye. I sat in the front row, Marcus on one side, my Aunt Robin on the other. The choir sang Amazing Grace, and I just lost it. Tears pouring down my face, shoulders shaking, barely able to breathe. Marcus held my hand, rubbed circles on my palm with his thumb. "I got you, baby," he whispered. "I got you." The pastor talked about Daddy's legacy, about how he came from nothing and built an empire, about how he never forgot where he came from, about how he raised his daughter alone after losing his wife and turned her into a successful woman. That part made me cry harder. Because Daddy did that. He sacrificed everything for me, worked 18-hour days so I could go to private school, paid for my college, my master's degree, my CPA certification, taught me everything he knew about business, about money, about protecting what's yours. Trust your gut, he used to say. And trusted the numbers. Numbers don't lie. People do. When it was time for me to give the eulogy, I could barely stand. My legs felt like jelly. But I made it to that podium because I owed my daddy that much. I talked about Sunday dinners at his house, about how he made the best barbecue in Georgia, about how he called me his little detective because even as a kid, I was always investigating something, always asking questions, always digging for answers. My father taught me that real wealth isn't money, I said, voice cracking. It's integrity. It's love. It's leaving the world better than you found it. And Daddy, you left this world so much better than you found it. I'm going to make you proud. I promise. I looked out at the crowd, saw all those faces wet with tears nodding along, saw Aunt Robin clutching her handkerchief, saw Deacon Morrison, Daddy's best friend for 30 years, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. And then I saw her, a woman I didn't recognize sitting in the back of the church. Light-skinned, pretty, maybe early 30s. She wasn't crying like everyone else. She was watching. Specifically, she was watching Marcus, and the way she looked at him made something in my stomach turn. I shook it off, told myself I was being paranoid. There were hundreds of people there. I couldn't know everyone, and I had bigger things to worry about than some random woman in the back row, but I filed it away. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I filed it away. The service ended. The pallbearers carried Daddy's casket out to the hearse. We all drove to the cemetery in a long procession, headlights on in the middle of the day, the whole city seeming to stop and watch us pass. At the gravesite, the pastor said a final prayer. The funeral home workers lowered the casket into the ground, and one by one, people came up to throw roses onto the dark wood. When it was my turn, I couldn't let go. I just stood there holding that red rose, staring down at the casket that held my daddy's body, thinking about all the things I never got to say, all the Sunday dinners we'd never have, all the grandchildren he'd never meet. He was supposed to walk my babies down the aisle someday. He was supposed to grow old and tell embarrassing stories about me at Thanksgiving. He was supposed to be here. I love you, Daddy, I whispered. I'm going to make you proud. I promise. I dropped the rose, watched it land on the casket with a soft thud. And that's when Marcus came up behind me. He put his arm around my waist, pulled me close, and leaned into my ear like he was about to say something comforting, something loving, something a husband should say to his wife at her father's funeral. But what came out of his mouth was something else entirely. Finally, now we can live how we were supposed to. That's what he said. Those exact words. Breath hot against my ear, arm tight around my waist, standing over my father's grave while they were shoveling dirt onto his casket. Finally. For a second, I thought I misheard him. My brain couldn't process what my ears had just received. Because there was no way my husband of 6 years, the man who had held me while I cried every night for 3 weeks, the man who had just driven me to my own father's funeral, there was no way he just said what I thought he said. What? My voice came out as a whisper. What did you say? Marcus pulled back slightly, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Something cold, calculating, satisfied. Then it was gone, replaced by that same concerned, loving expression he'd been wearing all day. I said I'm here for you, baby, he said smoothly. Whatever you need. But that wasn't what he said, and we both knew it. I stared at him, really looked at my husband's face for the first time in I don't know how long, and something shifted inside me, like a lens coming into focus, like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. His arm around my waist suddenly felt like a cage. His breath on my neck felt cold instead of comforting. His eyes, which I had always thought were warm and loving, now looked like they were calculating something, adding something up. Baby, you're trembling, Marcus said. Let's get you to the car. You need to rest. He guided me away from the grave, away from my daddy, and the whole time I was on autopilot, shaking hands with people who offered condolences, accepting hugs from church mothers, nodding at words I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. Finally, the word kept echoing in my head. Finally, finally, finally. What exactly had he been waiting for? What was supposed to happen now that my father was gone? And why? Why did he sound almost happy when he said it? I watched Marcus on the drive home, watched him in a way I'd never watched him before, noticed how he checked his phone every few minutes, noticed how there was no redness around his eyes, no signs that he'd been crying, noticed how his jaw was set in a way that looked less like grief and more like anticipation. "You okay, baby?" he asked, catching me staring. "Just tired," I said. "It's been a long day." "It has, but it's almost over. Just the repast, and then you can rest." The repast, the gathering at Daddy's house where everyone would come to eat and share memories. The house that was now mine. The house that Daddy had paid off 20 years ago. The house that was part of his estate. His estate. For the first time since the funeral, I thought about the will. The will reading was scheduled for Thursday. Daddy's attorney had called me last week to confirm, said it was straightforward, said Daddy had prepared everything clearly. I was the only child. My mother was gone. There were no other heirs. Everything Daddy had built over 67 years was going to me. Everything. And suddenly, Marcus's words took on a whole new meaning. Finally, now we can live how we were supposed to. Was he talking about Daddy's money? Had he been waiting for my father to die so he could get his hands on the inheritance? Was that what finally meant? No. No, that was crazy. That was grief and exhaustion making me paranoid. Marcus loved me. We'd been together for 8 years, married for 6. He wasn't some gold digger waiting for a payday. But the word kept ringing in my ears. Finally. Finally, finally, and somewhere deep in my gut, in that place where truth lives, even when we don't want to face it, I knew something was very, very wrong. I just didn't know how wrong yet. Daddy's house was full of people, full of food, and full of lies. The church mothers had set up in the kitchen like an army. Fried chicken collard greens, macaroni and cheese, pound cake. Sweet potato pie. Every surface covered with aluminum foil pans and Tupperware containers. That's how Black folks do grief. We feed it. We smother it with love and carbs and community. I stood in the living room accepting condolences, saying thank you for coming about 500 times and watching my husband work the room like he was running for office. Marcus was everywhere, shaking hands, hugging people, getting plates of food for the elderly women, playing the role of devoted son-in-law so perfectly that if you didn't know better, you'd think he actually lost someone he loved today. "Such a good man," I heard one of the church mothers say. "Destiny is blessed to have him." "Mm-hmm," another one replied. "James would be happy knowing she's taken care of." Taken care of. Like I was some helpless child who needed a man to survive. Like I didn't have a master's degree and a career that paid me 6 figures. Like I wasn't the one who paid most of our bills while Marcus's consulting business barely broke even. But that's how it looked from the outside. Marcus made sure of that. He was charming, attentive, always making sure I had a drink, that I was comfortable, that I wasn't standing too long. "Here, baby, sit down," he said, guiding me to Daddy's favorite armchair. "You've been on your feet all day." I sat, not because I wanted to, but because I was still trying to figure out what was happening, still trying to convince myself that I had misheard him at the cemetery, that my grief was playing tricks on me. That's when Tanya found me. Tanya Brooks has been my best friend since we were freshmen at Spelman. She was there when my mama died. She was there when I met Marcus. She was there when I got married. She knows me better than anyone alive now that Daddy's gone, and she could tell something was wrong the second she looked at my face. "Come with me," she said quietly, helping me up from the chair. "Now." She led me to the bathroom at the end of the hall, closed the door, locked it, and looked at me with those eyes that said she wasn't leaving until she got the truth. "What happened?" she demanded. "And don't tell me you're fine, because I've known you for 20 years, and that face says you are not fine." I opened my mouth to say I was okay, to make an excuse, to keep pretending, but something broke inside me and the words came tumbling out. At the cemetery, I said, voice barely above a whisper. Marcus said something right when they were lowering the casket. What did he say? He said, "Finally, now we can live how we were supposed to." Tanya's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, anger, understanding, and then something that looked a lot like confirmation. "What exactly did he say?" she asked slowly, word for word. "Finally, now we can live how we were supposed to." That's exactly what he said. And then, when I asked him to repeat it, he changed it, said he told me he was there for me. Tanya was quiet for a long moment. Too quiet. "Say something," I said. "Destiny." She took my hands in hers. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to really think before you answer. How long has Marcus been waiting for your father to die?" The question hit me like a slap. What he wasn't waiting for. But the words died in my throat. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know what Marcus was waiting for, or thinking, or planning, because apparently I didn't know my husband at all. "Girl," Tanya squeezed my hands, "I've been biting my tongue for years. But your daddy just died, and your husband said finally that man wasn't grieving today. I was watching him. He was celebrating. Maybe I misheard him. Did you?" I didn't answer because we both knew the truth. "Look," Tanya said, "I know today is not the day for this conversation, but promise me something. Promise me you'll pay attention. Watch him. Watch how he acts over the next few days. And if something feels off, you call me. Day or night. You call me." I nodded. "I promise." We came out of the bathroom and almost ran straight into my Aunt Robin, Daddy's younger sister, the one family member who never trusted Marcus from day one. "There you are," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Baby, how you holding up?" "I'm okay, Auntie." She held me at arm's length and looked at me with those sharp eyes that miss nothing. "No, you're not, but that's okay. You don't have to be okay right now." She glanced around, making sure we were alone. Then, she leaned in close. "I need to talk to you. Tomorrow. Come by my house. Alone." "What's this about?" "Your daddy left something for you. Something he wanted me to give you after the funeral. Something important." "Is it about the will?" "The reading isn't until Thursday." "It's not about the will." She looked over my shoulder at Marcus, who was laughing at something one of the deacons said. "It's about something else. Something James wanted only you to see." "Why not Marcus?" Aunt Robin's face hardened. "Because your daddy was specific. He said, 'Don't tell Marcus. Don't even let him know you're coming.'" A chill ran down my spine. "Auntie, what's going on?" "Tomorrow," she said. "I'll explain everything tomorrow. Just trust me. And trust your daddy. He knew what he was doing." She squeezed my arm and walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway with more questions than answers. I went back to the living room, back to playing the grieving daughter, back to watching my husband charm a room full of people who had no idea what kind of man he really was. Because I was starting to think I had no idea either. About an hour later, Deacon Charles Morrison pulled me aside. He'd been Daddy's best friend since before I was born. Used to come over for Sunday football games and poker nights. Knew every secret my father ever had. "Little Destiny," he said, using the nickname he'd called me since I was 5. "I am so sorry. Your daddy was the best man I ever knew." "Thank you, Deacon Morrison." He glanced around, then leaned in close. Same way Aunt Robin had. Same caution in his eyes. "Your father talked to me," he said quietly, "before he passed. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should make sure you were okay." "I am okay." "Are you?" He looked at me hard. "Because James was worried about you, about your situation." "What situation?" He didn't go into details, just said things might not be what they seemed. Said if you ever needed help or needed to talk, I should be there. "Deacon Morrison, what are you trying to tell me?" He opened his mouth to answer, but Marcus appeared at my shoulder like he'd been summoned. Baby Mrs. Patterson wants to say goodbye before she leaves. You should come." The deacon stepped back. The moment was over. "We'll talk later," he said. "You know where to find me." And then he was gone, leaving me with Marcus's arm around my waist and a growing certainty that everyone knew something I didn't. The rest of the repast was a blur. People eating, people leaving. Marcus cleaning up, playing the helpful husband. Me, sitting in my daddy's chair surrounded by photos of his face, trying to figure out when exactly my life became a mystery I needed to solve. By 8 o'clock, everyone was gone except me and Marcus. He locked the front door and turned to me with a smile. "You should sleep here tonight," he said. "I'll stay with you. I know it might be hard to be in this house, but it might also be comforting." I looked around at Daddy's things, his reading glasses on the side table, his Bible on the bookshelf, his jacket still hanging on the coat rack by the door. "Yeah," I said. "I think I want to stay." We went to bed in the guest room. Marcus fell asleep within minutes, snoring softly like he didn't have a care in the world. I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, thinking about Aunt Robin's warning and Deacon Morrison's concern and Tanya's question. Thinking about a woman in the back of the church who watched my husband instead of mourning my father. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. And tomorrow I was going to start figuring out exactly what it was. Because Daddy didn't raise a fool. Daddy raised a forensic accountant, a detective, a woman who finds hidden things for a living. And whatever Marcus was hiding, I was going to find it. That was a promise. 3 days after the funeral, I found the first piece of evidence. I wasn't even looking for it. That's the thing about truth. Sometimes it just falls into your lap when you're doing something ordinary. Something as simple as laundry. Marcus had gone out that morning, said he had a meeting with a potential client, kissed me on the forehead, told me to rest. Same song and dance he'd been doing since Daddy died, playing the perfect husband while I walked around the house like a ghost. I was still on bereavement leave from work, still couldn't bring myself to go back to my desk and pretend to care about spreadsheets and financial statements when my whole world had just collapsed. So I did laundry. Mindless work. Something to keep my hands busy while my mind ran in circles. I was going through Marcus's pants pockets checking for receipts and loose change like I always did before throwing them in the wash. And that's when I found it. A receipt from the Montclair Hotel, downtown. One of those fancy boutique places where a single night costs more than some people's rent. I looked at the date, 2 days before Daddy's funeral. My stomach dropped. I remembered that night. Marcus had called around 7, said he was stuck at the office. Big client meeting running late. Might not be home until midnight. I was sitting in our house crying into a pillow and he said, "Don't wait up. Go ahead and sleep. I love you, baby." And the whole time he was at a $487 hotel room downtown. I looked at the details on the receipt. Room for 2, bottle of champagne. Room service breakfast the next morning. Room for 2. My hands started shaking. I sat down on the laundry room floor, back against the washing machine, staring at this piece of paper that was either a misunderstanding or the beginning of the end. Maybe it was a business expense. Maybe he was entertaining a client. Maybe there was an explanation that didn't involve what I was thinking. But why wouldn't he tell me? Why lie about being at the office? Why hide a business dinner at a hotel when he could have just said he had a client dinner? I called him. My finger hovered over the call button for a full minute before I pressed it. "Hey, baby," he answered. All charm, all warmth. "Everything okay?" "I'm doing laundry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Found a receipt in your pocket, the Montclair Hotel." A pause. Half a second too long. "Oh, that," he said smoothly. "Client meeting. International guy likes the finer things. I was going to expense it, but forgot." A hotel room for a client meeting. He wanted somewhere private to talk. Business deals, you know how it is. Very sensitive. With champagne? Another pause. They like to celebrate in advance. It's a cultural thing. Cultural? Yeah. His voice shifted slightly, an edge creeping in. "Why are you grilling me about this? Don't you trust me?" And that's the thing about liars. They always flip it. make you the bad guy for asking questions, make you feel crazy for noticing things that don't add up. My father just died, Marcus. You told me you were working late, but you were at a luxury hotel having champagne. Can you understand why that might seem strange? He sighed. That long-suffering sigh men do when they think women are being unreasonable. Look, I didn't want to worry you. You were grieving. I needed to close this deal to keep money coming in since you haven't been working. I'm sorry if it looked bad, but I was doing it for us. For us. Everything Marcus did was always for us. His consulting business that barely made money, his networking events that cost a fortune, his expensive suits and luxury car, all for us. And somehow I was always the one paying for it. Okay, I said. I'm sorry. I'm just emotional right now. I know, baby. It's okay. We'll get through this together. I hung up and sat there on the laundry room floor for a long time. I didn't believe him. For the first time in our entire relationship, I didn't believe a single word my husband said. And that scared me more than anything. The next morning, I went to see Aunt Robin. She lived about 20 minutes away in a little house she'd bought with her teacher's pension. Nothing fancy, but it was hers, free and clear. No man had his name on any of it. Come in, baby, she said when she opened the door. I've been expecting you. Her kitchen smelled like coffee and cinnamon. She sat me down at the table and put a cup in front of me before she said another word. Before I give you what your daddy left, she said, I need you to understand something. James loved you more than his own life. Everything he did, everything he built, it was all for you. And the last few months of his life he spent protecting you. Protecting me from what? Aunt Robin reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small key, the kind that opens a safe deposit box at a bank. James gave me this 6 months ago, she said. Told me if anything ever happened to him, I should give it to you. Only you. He was very specific about that. Why not Marcus? She set the key on the table between us. Because James didn't trust Marcus. He never did, but he didn't want to hurt you by saying so. But a few months ago, something changed. James started asking questions, doing some digging, and what he found worried him enough to take out extra protection. What kind of protection? That's what's in the box. Everything he found. Everything he wanted you to know. I took the key. It felt heavy in my palm, like it weighed more than a small piece of metal had any right to weigh. He hired someone, Aunt Robin continued. A private investigator. Spent months looking into Marcus, into his business, into his finances, into other things. Other things. She looked at me with sadness in her eyes, the kind of sadness that says I'm sorry for what you're about to find out. Go to the bank, baby. See for yourself. And remember whatever you find in that box, your daddy did this because he loved you. He wanted you to be prepared. Prepared for what? For the truth. I drove to First National Bank in a daze, walked in with the key in my pocket and my heart in my throat, signed the paperwork with shaking hands, followed the attendant down to the vault. The box was bigger than I expected, heavy when they pulled it out and set it in front of me. The attendant left me alone in the private room, and I sat there staring at it for a full 5 minutes before I worked up the courage to open the lid. Inside was a thick manila envelope, a folder filled with documents, a stack of photographs, and a letter in my father's handwriting. I opened the letter first. My dearest Destiny saw. It began, If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm so sorry. Not for dying that comes for us all, but sorry that I have to break your heart from beyond the grave. Baby girl Marcus Williams is not who he says he is. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago when I noticed things. Small things at first. How he always changed the subject when I talked about my will. How he seemed more interested in my business than in you. How he looked at you sometimes not with love, but with calculation. What the investigator found is all in this box. He's been having an affair for 2 years, a woman named Patricia Hayes. She works at the law firm handling my estate. That's not a coincidence. He has $127,000 in hidden debt. Credit cards, loans, gambling. You don't know about any of it because he intercepted the mail and set up separate accounts. And worst of all, I found emails. He's been planning this for years, waiting for me to die so he could get to my money. Our money. The money I built for you. I changed my will, added protections. He won't find it easy to take what's yours, but you have to be smart. You're the smartest woman I know. You find fraud for a living. Now find the fraud in your own house. I love you more than anything in this world. Make me proud. Your daddy. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, the walls closing in. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling out of my chair. With trembling hands, I opened the folder of documents. The first page was a private investigator's report. Detailed, professional, thorough. Subject: Marcus Terrence Williams, 2-year affair with Patricia Ann Hayes, paralegal at Harris and Webb Law Firm, the same firm handling my father's estate. Multiple meetings documented, hotels, restaurants, her apartment, photos included. I flipped to the photographs. There they were. Marcus and a light-skinned woman I now recognized from the back of the church, walking into a hotel together, sitting across from each other at an intimate dinner, his hand on her waist, her head on his shoulder. The date stamps went back almost 2 years. He'd been cheating on me for 2 years. 2 years of lies. 2 years of working late and client meetings, and I love you, baby. 2 years. I kept reading. Financial records showed debt I never knew existed, credit cards maxed out, personal loans from predatory lenders, online gambling accounts with thousands of dollars in losses, and there were printouts of emails between Marcus and Patricia. I read the first one. Marcus to Patricia 14 months ago. The old man can't live forever. Once he's gone, destiny gets everything. I've been setting this up for 8 years. Just need to be patient. 8 years. He'd been planning this since before we got married, since the very beginning. Patricia to Marcus 8 months ago. I got access to the estate file. Her father's worth over $8 million. Just play the loving husband until it's done. Then we disappear. $8 million. That's what I was worth to him. Not as a wife, not as a partner. As a payout. Marcus to Patricia 3 months ago. She's completely clueless. Too busy worshiping Daddy to see what's right in front of her. Once he dies and she gets the money, I'll get her to transfer assets to our joint accounts, then file for divorce. She'll be too devastated to fight. Too devastated to fight. That was his plan. Wait for my father to die. Pretend to comfort me. Manipulate me into combining my inheritance with marital assets. Then divorce me and take half. Or more. I sat in that bank vault for over an hour, reading and rereading, looking at every photograph, absorbing every detail. And then something happened inside me. The grief I'd been drowning in for 3 weeks transformed. It didn't go away, but it made room for something else, something hotter, stronger, more dangerous. Rage. Pure, clean rage. My father spent the last months of his life trying to protect me from a predator. While I was cooking Marcus's dinner and washing his clothes and believing his lies, my daddy was fighting a battle I didn't even know was happening. And now, Daddy was gone. But his work wasn't finished. I gathered everything back into the box. The letter, the documents, the photographs, the emails. All of it. Evidence, ammunition, weapons. Marcus thought he was running the game. Thought he was the predator and I was the prey. Thought my grief would make me stupid and compliant and easy to manipulate. But he forgot one very important thing. I'm a forensic accountant. I find money that people try to hide. I trace assets through shell companies and offshore accounts. I've helped prosecute fraud cases worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I've spent my entire career learning how criminals hide their schemes and how to expose them. Marcus wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was an amateur playing games with a professional, and I was about to show him the difference. I walked out of that bank a different woman than the one who walked in. My daddy was still dead. My heart was still broken. But my eyes were finally open, and Marcus Williams was about to learn what happens when you try to con a woman who makes a living catching con artists. Daddy raised a fighter, and the fight was just beginning. I called Tanya before I even left the bank parking lot. "I need you," I said. "Tonight, your house, and call Nicole." She didn't ask questions. That's the thing about real friends. They hear the tone in your voice and they move. No explanations needed, no 20 questions. Just show up and figure it out together. "I'll have food ready," she said. "Be here at 7. Nicole is my cousin on my mama's side. More like a sister than a cousin, really. We grew up together, got into trouble together, held each other through every heartbreak and disappointment life threw our way. She works in HR at a big corporation downtown, which means she knows how to dig up information on people. Background checks are basically her love language. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting at Tanya's kitchen table with the entire contents of that safe deposit box spread out in front of us. Tanya on my left, Nicole on my right, Aunt Robin across from me. My war council, my sister circle. Nobody said anything for a long time. They just read, passed papers back and forth, looked at photographs, their faces going through the same journey mine had gone through hours earlier. Nicole broke the silence first. "I'm going to kill him." She said it calm, matter of fact, like she was reading a grocery list. "I'm literally going to kill him. Tonight. Right now. Where does he think he is right now? I'll go there and end this." "No." Tanya held up her hand. "We're not doing that. We're going to destroy him legally. And trust me, it's going to hurt a whole lot worse and last a whole lot longer than anything you could do with your hands." "But look at this." Nicole grabbed one of the emails. 8 years. He's been planning this for 8 years, since before they even got married. This man looked at Destiny and saw a lottery ticket. That's it. That's all she ever was to him. "I know." Tanya's voice was steel. "Which is why we're going to be smart about this. Emotional reactions are what he's counting on. He expects Destiny to fall apart, to be too devastated to think straight. That's his whole plan. So we're going to do the opposite." She turned to me. "Destiny, talk to us. What are you thinking?" I took a deep breath, tried to organize the tornado in my head into something that made sense. "I'm thinking I need to know everything," I said. "Every lie, every dollar, every woman. I need the complete picture before I make any moves." "That's my girl." Tanya nodded. "Okay, let's break down what we know." She grabbed a notepad and started writing. "The affair. Patricia Hayes, 34 years old, paralegal at Harris & Webb. That's the same firm handling your daddy's estate, which is not a coincidence. She's been feeding Marcus information, probably helped him understand how estates work, what the vulnerabilities are, how to position himself." 2 years, Nicole added. The investigator documented meetings going back almost 2 years. Hotels, restaurants, her apartment. This wasn't some one-time mistake. This was a whole relationship. "And she was at the funeral," I said quietly. "I saw her. Didn't know who she was, but I saw her watching Marcus. Now I know why." Tanya kept writing. "The debt, $127,000 total, $45,000 in credit cards, $52,000 in personal loans, $30,000 in gambling losses." "Gambling!" Nicole's eyes went wide. "This fool has been gambling. Online poker, sports betting. The investigator found accounts under a different email address. He's been hemorrhaging money for years." "And I never knew." My voice cracked. "How did I never know I'm a forensic accountant? I find hidden money for a living. How did I miss this in my own house?" Aunt Robin reached across the table and took my hand. "Because you trusted him, baby. You loved him. And when you love someone, you don't go looking for lies. You're not supposed to have to investigate your own husband." "But Daddy found out. Daddy saw it." "Your daddy wasn't in love with Marcus. He was watching him like a hawk watches a snake near its nest. He saw what you couldn't see because love wasn't blinding him." Tanya pulled out the emails next. Read them out loud, one by one. Marcus to Patricia, 14 months ago. "The old man can't live forever. Once he's gone, Destiny gets everything. I've been setting this up for 8 years. Just need to be patient." "Setting this up for 8 years?" Nicole repeated. "The whole marriage was a setup. Every I love you, every anniversary dinner, every time he touched you, all of it was part of the con. Patricia to Marcus, 8 months ago. I got access to the estate file. Her father is worth over $8 million. Just play the loving husband until it's done. Then we disappear. $8 million. Tanya let out a low whistle. That's what you're worth to him. Not as a wife, not as a partner, as a check. Marcus to Patricia 3 months ago. She's completely clueless, too busy worshiping Daddy to see what's right in front of her. Once he dies and she gets the money, I'll get her to transfer assets to our joint accounts, then file for divorce. She'll be too devastated to fight. That one hit the hardest. Too devastated to fight. Like I was already defeated, like he had already won. So that's the plan, I said slowly, working it out in my head. Wait for Daddy to die. Comfort me through the grief. Convince me to combine my inheritance with our marital assets. Then divorce me and take half, or more. That's exactly the plan, Tanya confirmed. But here's the thing. He doesn't know that you know, and he doesn't know what your daddy put in that will. The will reading is Thursday, which gives us 3 days to figure out our next move. Aunt Robin cleared her throat. There's something else, baby. Something your daddy told me before he passed, about the will. Everyone turned to look at her. James changed his will about 4 months ago, added what he called protection clauses. He didn't tell me exactly what they said, but he told me that Marcus would not find it easy to get his hands on that money. Said he'd made sure of it. Hope flickered in my chest, the first real hope I'd felt since this nightmare started. What kind of protection? I don't know the details, but your daddy was a smart man. The smartest man I ever knew when it came to money and legal matters. If he said he protected you, then you're protected. Tanya was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Okay, so here's what we need to do. Destiny, you're a forensic accountant. It's time to use those skills on your own marriage. What do you mean? I mean, we need to find out everything. Every dollar Marcus has taken from you. Every account he's hidden. Every lie he's told. We need the complete financial picture before we do anything else. Nicole nodded. I can help with background. I have access to databases through work, criminal records, employment history, credit reports, whatever you need. And I'm a real estate attorney, Tanya added. I know property law, asset protection, divorce proceedings. We're going to build a case so airtight that Marcus won't be able to wiggle out of anything. What about confronting him? I asked. Don't I have to say something? No. Tanya's voice was firm. The worst thing you can do right now is let him know you're on to him. The second he knows, he starts covering his tracks. He moves money. He destroys evidence. He gets his story straight with Patricia. Right now, he thinks you're just a grieving widow. Let him keep thinking that. So, I have to pretend everything is normal. For now, I know it's hard. I know every time he touches you, you're going to want to scream. But you're playing a longer game now. And you're going to win. Aunt Robin squeezed my hand. Your daddy would be so proud of you, baby. He didn't raise you to fall apart. He raised you to fight. I looked around the table at these women who loved me, who showed up without question, who were ready to go to war for me. This was my sister circle, my army, my family, and together we were going to take Marcus Williams apart, piece by piece. Okay, I said. Let's get to work. We stayed at Tanya's house until after midnight, making lists, assigning tasks, building a timeline of everything I needed to investigate. By the time I drove home, I had a plan, a real plan, not just emotions and anger, but a strategic, methodical approach to uncovering every single lie my husband had ever told. Marcus was asleep when I got home, snoring on his side of the bed like he didn't have a care in the world, like he hadn't spent 8 years lying to my face. I stood in the doorway and watched him for a long time. This man I had loved, this man I had built a life with, this man I had trusted with my heart, my body, my future. He was a stranger, worse than a stranger. He was an enemy who had been sleeping next to me for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. But he didn't know that the prey had just become the predator. I climbed into bed beside him, let him put his arm around me in his sleep, let him pull me close like he always did. And I smiled in the darkness, because Marcus Williams had no idea what was coming, and by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late. For the next 3 days, I became someone I didn't recognize. On the surface, I was still grieving widow destiny, crying at random moments, sleeping too much, barely eating, letting Marcus take care of me like the devoted husband he pretended to be. But underneath that mask, I was working, hunting, gathering evidence like a woman possessed. See, people think forensic accounting is boring, numbers and spreadsheets and tax returns. But the truth is, it's detective work. Every dollar tells a story. Every transaction leaves a trail. And if you know how to read the signs, money will tell you everything about a person. It'll tell you who they really are. Marcus thought he was smart, thought he'd covered his tracks well enough that his financial illiterate wife would never notice. What he forgot was that his wife wasn't financially illiterate. His wife was one of the best fraud investigators in the state, and I was about to forensic account his entire life. Day 1. The bank accounts. I started with our joint checking account, the one we'd had since we got married, the one where my paycheck went every 2 weeks, the one Marcus said he managed because he was better with money. Better with money. What a joke. I downloaded every statement going back 5 years, printed them out, spread them across my home office floor like a paper carpet, and I started tracing. What I found made me sick. Small withdrawals. 200 here, 300 there. Never enough to trigger any alerts. Never enough to notice on a casual glance. But over time, those small withdrawals added up. Marcus had been siphoning money from our joint account for years. A slow bleed that I never noticed because I trusted him, because I was too busy working and taking care of everything else to pay attention to the details. Total amount missing over 5 years, $34,000. $34,000 of my money. Gone. Transferred to accounts I'd never heard of. Withdrawn in cash that disappeared into thin air. And that was just the beginning. I found credit card accounts in my name that I never opened. Cards with my social security number, my birthday, my mother's maiden name on the applications. Cards that had been maxed out and minimum payments made from our joint account. Marcus had committed identity theft against his own wife. Used my credit to rack up $23,000 in debt that I didn't know existed. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, men's clothing boutiques, all charged to cards in my name. He'd been living a double life on my credit. Day 2. His business. Marcus always said his consulting business brought in about $60,000 a year. Enough to contribute. Enough to pull his weight. That's what he told me. That's what he told everyone. I pulled his tax returns. The ones he filed separately because he said it was easier for business purposes. His actual income last year, $12,000. Not 60. 12. The year before that, 8,000. The year before that, 14,000. In the entire time we'd been married, Marcus's so-called business had never made more than 20,000 in a single year. He'd been lying to me about his income since day 1. I was supporting us, completely. I was paying the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, the car payments, his car payment, his insurance, his gym membership, all of it, and he walked around acting like he was the provider, like I should be grateful, like he was doing me some kind of favor by being my husband. I calculated the total, every dollar I'd contributed to our household over 6 years of marriage versus every dollar he'd contributed. Me, $847,000. Him, $63,000. I'd put in almost $850,000. He'd put in $63,000, and he thought he was entitled to half of everything. Day 3. The mistress. This part required some creativity and some help from Nicole. Patricia Hayes, 34 years old, paralegal at Harris and Webb for 7 years. Good employee according to her file, competent, reliable, specializes in estate law. Of course she does. Nicole pulled her social media profiles, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Patricia wasn't exactly subtle about her lifestyle. Designer bags in every photo, Louboutin heels, expensive dinners at restaurants I'd only heard about, vacations to places like Turks and Caicos and Cabo San Lucas, all on a paralegal salary. Please. I traced the money. That's what I do. And I found payments from accounts linked to Marcus going to her Venmo, her Cash App, her PayPal. My husband was bankrolling his mistress with money he stole from me. $6,000 over the past year alone. $6,000 that came from my paycheck went through Marcus's hands and ended up buying designer purses for the woman he was sleeping with. I wanted to throw up, but I kept working, kept documenting, kept building my case. Nicole found something else, too. Patricia's apartment lease. Nice place downtown. $1,500 a month. And guess whose name was on the lease as a co-signer? Marcus Terrence Williams. My husband had co-signed his mistress's apartment, while living in my house, eating food I paid for, driving a car I financed. He was playing house with another woman on my dime. I had to take a break after that one. Went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. Looked at myself in the mirror and reminded myself why I was doing this. For Daddy. For me. For every woman who's ever been played by a man who saw her as nothing but a meal ticket. Then I went back to work. The last piece of the puzzle was the emails. The ones from the safe deposit box showed their plan in broad strokes. But I wanted more. I wanted details. I wanted to know exactly what they said about me when they thought no one was listening. I got into Marcus's email. Don't ask me how. Let's just say that when you've been married to someone for 6 years, you know their passwords. You know the names of their childhood pets. You know their mother's birthday. And you know that Marcus was never creative enough to use anything that wasn't easy to guess. His inbox was a goldmine. Hundreds of emails between him and Patricia going back 2 years. I downloaded every single one. The early ones were flirty, getting to know each other, making plans to meet, the usual affair nonsense. But then they started talking about money, about me, about the plan. Patricia, 18 months ago. How much do you think she'll inherit when the old man dies? Marcus, conservative estimate, at least $5 million. Could be more. He's got properties all over the city. Patricia, and she doesn't suspect anything. Marcus, are you kidding? Destiny thinks I hung the moon? Woman works 60 hours a week, comes home, cooks dinner, and thanks me for being supportive. She has no idea I'm running the show. Running the show. Like I was some puppet and he was pulling the strings. There were more. So many more. Marcus, 12 months ago. Her father had some kind of heart scare. Doctor says he needs to slow down. This might happen sooner than we thought. Patricia, should we speed up our timeline? Marcus, no. We stay patient. One wrong move and we lose everything. Just keep getting information from the estate files. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. So she was feeding him confidential information from my father's estate file. Information she only had access to because she worked at the law firm. That's not just unethical. That's illegal. The most recent emails were the worst. Patricia, 2 weeks before Daddy died. I heard his health is getting worse. Are you ready? Marcus, been ready for 8 years. Once he's gone, I give her about 6 months of grieving before I start moving assets. By this time next year, we'll be on a beach in Brazil counting our money. Patricia, I can't wait to stop pretending I don't know you at the office. Marcus, soon, baby. Very soon. Brazil. They were planning to flee the country with my inheritance. I printed everything, every email, every financial document, every photograph, every piece of evidence that proved my husband was a con artist who had been playing me since the day we met. And then I organized it all into neat folders, color-coded, cross-referenced, annotated with dates and amounts and relevant legal statutes. 34,000 stolen from joint accounts, 23,000 in fraudulent credit card debt, 127,000 in hidden debt, 6,000 sent to his mistress. 8 years of lies, manipulation, and planning. Total damage. Close to $200,000 in direct theft and fraud. Hundreds of thousands more in opportunity cost emotional damage and lost years of my life. I called Tanya. I've got everything I said. Every dollar, every lie, every email. Good, because the will reading is tomorrow, and I think Marcus is about to get the surprise of his life. I smiled. A real smile, the first one since Daddy died. Oh, he definitely is. The hunter had become the hunted, and Marcus Williams had no idea the trap was about to close. Thursday morning, the day of the will reading. I woke up before sunrise. Couldn't sleep anyway. My mind was racing with everything I knew and everything that was about to happen. Marcus was already up. making coffee, humming to himself in the kitchen like a man without a care in the world. Like today was just another day and not the day he'd been waiting 8 years for. "Morning, baby," he said when I came downstairs. "You sleep okay?" "Not really. Big day." "I know." He handed me a cup of coffee. "You nervous about the reading?" "A little. It's just, it makes it real, you know. Going through his things, his wishes. It's like saying goodbye all over again." Marcus nodded sympathetically. The concerned husband. The supportive partner. The performance of a lifetime. "I'll be right there with you," he said. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Together? What a joke. The only thing Marcus wanted to face together was my bank account. I sipped my coffee and watched him over the rim of the cup, looking for cracks in the mask, signs of the predator underneath. He was good. I'll give him that. If I didn't know what I knew, I would have believed every word, every look, every gentle touch on my shoulder. But I did know. And now all I saw was the con. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock at Harris and Webb, the same firm where Patricia worked. I wondered if she'd be there, if she'd have the audacity to sit in the room while my father's estate was divided up, knowing she was part of a scheme to steal it. We pulled into the parking garage at 9:45. Marcus insisted on driving, said I was too emotional to be behind the wheel. Really, I think he wanted to feel in control, like he was steering more than just the car. The law firm took up the entire 14th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and mahogany and leather furniture. The kind of place that smells like money and speaks in hushed, serious tones. Aunt Robin was already in the lobby when we arrived. She hugged me tight, then gave Marcus a look that could curdle milk. She'd never liked him. Turns out her instincts were better than mine. Deacon Morrison was there too, sitting in a leather chair, Bible in his lap, looking like a man preparing for battle. He stood when he saw me and wrapped me in one of those hugs that only old churchmen can give, strong and safe and full of unspoken promises. "Your daddy loved you," he whispered in my ear. "Remember that. No matter what happens in there, remember how much he loved you." I nodded, squeezed his hand, drew strength from his presence. A young woman in a gray suit came to collect us, led us down a long hallway to a conference room with a view of the whole city. Daddy would have loved this view. He always said you could see the future from up high, and there she was, Patricia Hayes, sitting in the corner with a legal pad ready to take notes, looking every bit the professional paralegal in her modest blouse and pencil skirt. Our eyes met for just a second, just long enough for me to see the flicker of recognition. The flash of guilt quickly covered by a professional smile. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, rehearsed, practiced, empty. "Thank you," I replied, equally rehearsed, equally empty. I watched Marcus in my peripheral vision, watched how he carefully didn't look at Patricia, how they both pretended to be strangers in a room full of people who had no idea they'd been sleeping together for 2 years. Good actors, both of them. But I was a better detective. We all took seats around the long conference table, me and Marcus on one side, Aunt Robin and Deacon Morrison on the other, Patricia in her corner, and at the head of the table a silver-haired attorney named William Webb, senior partner, the man who had handled my father's legal affairs for over 20 years. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Webb began. "I know this is a difficult time, and I'll try to make this as straightforward as possible." He opened a thick folder, adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat. "The last will and testament of James Arthur Carter, revised and executed 4 months prior to his death." 4 months. Daddy had changed his will 4 months ago, right around the time he started investigating Marcus. I kept my face neutral, but inside, hope was building. "Mr. Carter's estate consists of the following assets," Mr. Webb continued. "Real estate holdings valued at approximately $4.2 million, investment and retirement accounts totaling $2.1 million, life insurance policy with a death benefit of $1.5 million, the family residence valued at $800,000, and various personal effects vehicles and miscellaneous assets valued at approximately $300,000. I heard Marcus inhale sharply beside me, trying to add up the numbers in his head, coming to the realization that my father was worth even more than he thought. Total estate value $8.9 million. Mr. Webb looked up from his papers, looked directly at me. Mr. Carter has named one primary beneficiary for all assets. His daughter, Destiny Marie Carter Williams. Everything. Daddy left me everything. I felt tears prick my eyes, not from the money, from the love, from the knowledge that my father had worked his whole life to build something he could leave to me. Marcus squeezed my hand. The supportive husband, but I could feel the excitement thrumming through him, could practically see the dollar signs reflected in his eyes. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. 8 years of playing the long game. 8 years of pretending to love me. And finally the payoff was here. Or so he thought. However, Mr. Webb continued, and that one word changed everything. Mr. Carter added a special provision to this will, a provision that he was very specific about. I'll read it exactly as he wrote it. Marcus's hand tightened on mine. His body went still. Mr. Webb picked up another document, read slowly and clearly. I, James Arthur Carter, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare that any and all inheritance to my daughter Destiny shall remain her sole and separate property. This inheritance shall not be considered marital property under any circumstances. It shall not be commingled with any marital assets. It shall not be placed in any joint accounts, joint trusts, or any financial vehicle to which Destiny's spouse has access. The air in the room changed. I felt Marcus stop breathing beside me. Mr. Webb continued. Any attempt to commingle these assets with marital property, any attempt to add a spouse's name to any account or deed, any attempt to transfer any portion of this inheritance to any party other than Destiny herself, shall trigger an immediate transfer of all assets to the James Carter Family Trust. This trust shall be administered by my sister Robin Carter James and my longtime friend, Charles Morrison. Neither Destiny nor her spouse shall have access to these funds until the trust administrators determine that all threats to the estate have been resolved. Marcus's hand was crushing mine now, his whole body rigid with shock. Furthermore, Mr. Webb read, no spouse of my daughter shall have any claim, access, or rights to any portion of this inheritance. This provision is absolute and irrevocable. It cannot be overturned by any court, any legal proceeding, or any future modification to this will. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus was white as a sheet. His jaw clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. 8 years of planning, and my daddy had built a wall around his money that Marcus couldn't climb over. I looked across the table at Aunt Robin. She gave me the slightest nod, the ghost of a smile on her lips. Deacon Morrison was openly grinning. He knew. They both knew what Daddy had done. Mr. Webb set down the document. Mr. Carter was very clear about his wishes. He wanted to ensure that his daughter's inheritance remained protected. He consulted with me extensively about the strongest possible legal protections, and we implemented every single one. That's... Marcus's voice came out strangled. He cleared his throat. Tried again. That's unusual, isn't it? That kind of provision. Mr. Webb looked at him coolly. It's not common, but it's perfectly legal. Mr. Carter had the right to structure his estate however he wished, and he wished to protect his daughter. But we're married. Marcus was struggling to keep his composure. What's hers is ours. That's how marriage works. Not according to this will, and not according to state law regarding inherited assets. Mr. Webb's voice was firm. Inherited property is separate property unless it's willingly commingled with marital assets. Mr. Carter's provision ensures that commingling can never happen. Marcus turned to me, put on his concerned face. Baby, this is crazy. Your father didn't trust me. After all these years, we should talk to another lawyer. There has to be a way to simplify this. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the desperation behind the performance. Daddy was just being careful, I said quietly. You know how he was about money. But we're a team. What's yours is mine and what's mine is yours. That's what marriage means. Actually, Aunt Robin spoke up, what's yours is yours and what's hers is hers. That's what James's will means. And I think my brother knew exactly what he was doing. The look Marcus gave her could have peeled paint, but he couldn't say anything, couldn't do anything. He was trapped in his own performance, unable to show his real reaction without revealing himself. Patricia was scribbling furiously in her corner, no doubt documenting everything so she and Marcus could strategize later, find loopholes, plan their next move. But I already knew there were no loopholes. Daddy had made sure of that. "Is there anything else we need to cover?" I asked Mr. Webb. "Just some paperwork, signatures to begin the transfer process. And Mrs. Carter-Williams, you'll need to set up new accounts for the inheritance. Accounts in your name only as per your father's instructions." "I understand." The rest of the meeting was administrative details. Marcus sat silently seething while I signed papers and asked questions and pretended I didn't notice my husband's world crumbling around him. When it was finally over, we walked back to the car in silence. Marcus didn't open my door this time, didn't take my hand, didn't perform any of the little courtesies he usually performed. He was too angry to pretend. We didn't speak the entire drive home. The silence was heavy with everything unsaid, everything about to explode. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, Marcus spoke. "That provision, your father's provision. It's not right, Destiny. It's like he didn't trust me. Like he thought I was some kind of gold digger." I turned to look at him. "Did you give him a reason not to trust you? What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing." I opened my car door. "I'm tired. I'm going to lie down." I walked into the house and left him sitting in the car, staring at nothing his 8-year plan in ruins. Daddy had protected me from beyond the grave, and this was only the beginning. The days after the will reading were like watching a snake realize it's trapped. Marcus couldn't show his anger, couldn't reveal his frustration, but it leaked out in small ways. A sharp tone here, a slammed cabinet there, long showers where I knew he was on the phone with Patricia strategizing. He thought I couldn't hear him, thought the bathroom fan covered his voice, but I'd positioned myself in the hallway closet on the other side of the wall, the one where the ductwork carried sound like a telephone line. "There has to be a loophole," he hissed into the phone. "Some way around the provision." Patricia's voice tinny through the phone speaker. "I've looked at everything. The will is airtight. Webb knew what he was doing." Then we find another angle. She's grieving, emotional. I can convince her to move money around, make investments that technically aren't commingling. "Marcus, the provision is specific. Any transfer to any account you have access to triggers the trust. You can't touch a single dollar." A long pause. Then, Marcus' voice, desperate. "I've spent 8 years on this. 8 years. I'm not walking away with nothing." "Maybe we need to adjust the plan. Forget the inheritance. Focus on the divorce. You're still entitled to half of the marital assets." "What marital assets? She paid for everything." "The house is technically in both names, but she made every payment. My lawyer says I'd be lucky to walk away with $50,000. $50,000 is better than nothing." $50,000 is nothing compared to $8 million. His voice cracked with frustration. "I was supposed to be rich, Patricia. We were supposed to be on a beach somewhere by now, not scraping for $50,000 like some regular broke loser." I stood in that closet, hand over my mouth, listening to my husband refer to himself as a regular broke loser, while complaining about only getting $50,000 in a divorce. The audacity. The absolute audacity. But I wasn't done listening. "What about the house?" Patricia asked. "Her father's house. It's paid off, right? Her name only. He left it to her specifically. Same protection clause." "The car. Her name. Any joint investments? Nothing significant. She put everything into her 401k and her own accounts. I never had access." Patricia sighed. "Marcus, maybe it's time to cut your losses. Take what you can get and move on." "No." His voice went hard. "I'm not giving up. There has to be another way. Maybe I can get her to invest in my business, or co-sign on something, or gift me money for a project, something that looks legitimate. And if she says no, she won't say no. She loves me. She'll do anything to make me happy." I heard the faucet turn on. The conversation was over. I slipped out of the closet and back to the bedroom before he came out. Lay on the bed with my eyes closed, pretending to sleep. Marcus came in a few minutes later. stood at the foot of the bed watching me. I could feel his eyes on me, calculating, scheming. Then he lay down beside me, put his arm around me, kissed my shoulder. "I love you, baby," he whispered. I didn't move, didn't respond. Just let him hold me while my skin crawled with disgust. Over the next week, Marcus became the most attentive husband in the world. Breakfast in bed every morning, foot rubs at night, sweet texts throughout the day, flowers delivered twice. He took over all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the little tasks he'd never bothered with before. "You just rest," he kept saying. "You just heal. Let me take care of everything." And in between all that care, all that attention, the asks started. First, it was subtle. "Baby, I've been thinking about your father's properties, the commercial ones downtown. Those need management, right? I could help with that. Take some of the burden off you." The estate executor handles all that, Marcus. It's in the trust provisions. Right, but day-to-day decisions, tenant issues, maintenance, you shouldn't have to deal with all that while you're grieving. Let me help. "I appreciate that, but Aunt Robin and Deacon Morrison are handling it. That's what Daddy wanted." His jaw tightened, just for a second. Then the smile was back. "Of course, whatever you need." Then the asks got more direct. "I've been looking at investment opportunities. Real estate is booming right now. If we could pull some capital together, we could flip properties, double our money in a year." "I don't have access to capital right now, Marcus. Everything is in the trust." "But you could request a distribution right for investment purposes. The trustees would have to approve it, and they'd want to see business plans, projections, all that." "I can put together a business plan, a solid one. This is what I do, baby. Let me show you what I'm capable of." I looked at him, at this man who had never successfully run a business in his life, who had lost money on every venture he'd ever touched, who wanted me to hand him a piece of my father's legacy so he could blow it on whatever scheme he and Patricia had cooked up. "I'll think about it," I said. His eyes lit up. "Really? Baby, you won't regret this, I promise." "I said I'll think about it." "Not yes." The light dimmed slightly, but he nodded, kept playing his role. That night, he brought home a bottle of expensive wine, my favorite, poured me a glass, made a toast. "To us," he said, "to our future, to building something amazing together." I clinked my glass against his, took a small sip, watched him drain his. He had no idea that Tanya was drafting divorce papers at that very moment, that Nicole was compiling a background report that would destroy his reputation, that I had already transferred every dollar I could control into accounts he'd never touch. He thought he was still running the game, still pulling the strings. 2 days later, he escalated again. I came home from Aunt Robin's house to find papers on the kitchen table. Official looking, Marcus standing beside them with a pen. "What's this?" I asked. "I had my accountant draw these up. It's just a simple thing, really, adding me as a beneficiary on some of your accounts, for protection purposes." I picked up the papers, read them carefully. They weren't just beneficiary forms. They were authorization forms, giving Marcus full access to accounts in my name only, power to make withdrawals, transfers, investments, complete financial control, and buried in the fine print a line that would let him drain every account without my permission. He'd forged my signature on the first page, just needed the second signature to make it official. "Marcus," I kept my voice calm, "what is this really? Just protection, baby. In case something happens to you, I'd need access to take care of things. There are other ways to handle that, ways that don't give you access to my accounts." His face flickered, frustration breaking through the mask. "Why are you being so difficult about this? We're married. What's yours is mine." "That's not what my father's will says." "Your father is dead." The words came out sharp, angry. He caught himself immediately. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I want to help. I want to be part of your life, part of your finances, part of everything. Part of my $8 million, you mean." The words hung in the air between us. Marcus's face went through several expressions: confusion, denial, fear, and then finally a cold, hard anger that I'd never seen before. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that for 8 years you've been playing a role. The devoted husband, the supportive partner. But you've never been any of those things. You've just been waiting for my father to die, waiting for your payday." "That's crazy. Who told you that?" "Nobody told me. I'm a forensic accountant, Marcus. I find hidden things for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't find them in my own house?" He stared at me, the mask slipping, the real Marcus showing through. "What did you find?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up one of his emails to Patricia. "The old man can't live forever. Once he's gone, destiny gets everything. I've been setting this up for 8 years. The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that? Does it matter?" I put the phone away. "I have everything, Marcus. The emails, the financial records, the photographs, the secret accounts, the hidden debt, the girlfriend you've been keeping on the side." Patricia isn't... Don't insult me by lying anymore. I know about Patricia. I know about the $127,000 in debt. I know about the $34,000 you stole from our accounts. I know about the credit cards in my name. I know everything." Marcus was silent for a long moment, the fight going out of him, the performance finally over. "How long have you known long enough? And you've been pretending this whole time, acting like everything was normal while you gathered evidence. I learned from the best. You've been pretending for 8 years. I only had to pretend for a week." He laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "So what now? You go to the police, you divorce me. What's your play here, destiny?" I gathered the papers he'd tried to trick me into signing, tore them in half, let the pieces fall to the floor. "My play is that you're going to learn what happens when you try to con a woman who makes a living catching con artists." I walked to the front door, opened it. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to stay with my aunt tonight, and tomorrow you're going to be served with divorce papers. I suggest you find somewhere else to live before then." "You can't do this. I have rights. We're married." Your rights are what my lawyer says they are, and based on the evidence I have, your rights are pretty much nothing." I stepped outside, turned to look at him one last time. 8 years, I said. "You wasted 8 years of your life on a con that never had a chance. My father saw you coming from a mile away. He protected me, and now I'm going to finish what he started." I closed the door on my marriage, and I didn't look back. The morning of my divorce hearing, I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not happiness exactly. Not yet. But a calm certainty that what was about to happen was right. That justice was coming. That my father's protection and my own hard work were about to pay off in ways Marcus Williams never saw coming. I took my time getting ready. Did my hair the way I liked it, not the way Marcus always suggested. Wore the red dress that made me feel powerful, the one Marcus said was too much for everyday wear. Put on the diamond earrings Daddy gave me for my 30th birthday. Today wasn't every day. Today was the day I took my life back. Tanya picked me up at 8. She was acting as my attorney pro bono because that's what sisters do. Nicole rode in the back seat with a folder full of backup evidence just in case. Aunt Robin and Deacon Morrison would meet us at the courthouse. "You ready?" Tanya asked as we pulled out of the driveway. "I've been ready since the day I found out who he really was." "Good, because today is going to be satisfying as hell." The Fulton County Courthouse was a massive building that always made me feel small, but not today. Today, I walked up those steps like I owned them, head high, shoulders back, ready for war. Marcus was already there when we arrived, sitting on a bench outside the courtroom with a public defender who looked about 12 years old and completely overwhelmed by the case file in his lap. That was Marcus's problem now. No money meant no fancy lawyer. No fancy lawyer meant a overworked public defender who'd probably reviewed the case for 15 minutes that morning. Meanwhile, I had Tanya, Harvard Law, 15 years of experience, and a personal vendetta against cheating husbands that made her absolutely ruthless in court. Marcus looked up when I walked in. His eyes went wide at the red dress, the confident stride, the complete absence of the broken woman he'd expected to see. "Destiny." He stood up, tried to approach me. "Can we talk before we go in there? Maybe we can work something out." Tanya stepped between us. "My client has nothing to say to you. Save it for the judge." "This doesn't have to be ugly. We were married for 6 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at him over Tanya's shoulder. "It meant everything to me. It meant nothing to you. That's why we're here." The bailiff called us into the courtroom before he could respond. Judge Patricia Henderson presiding. A black woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and no patience for nonsense. I'd done my research. She was known for being fair but fierce, especially in cases involving financial misconduct. Perfect. We took our seats. Me and Tanya on one side, Marcus and his overwhelmed public defender on the other. Aunt Robin and Deacon Morrison in the gallery behind me. Nicole ready with her phone to document everything. "This is a hearing in the matter of Carter Williams versus Williams," Judge Henderson began. "Petition for divorce filed by Destiny Carter Williams. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mrs. Carter Williams, you're alleging fraud, financial misconduct, and adultery as grounds for divorce." Tanya stood. "Yes, Your Honor, and we have extensive documentation to support each allegation. Mr. Williams, you've filed a counterpetition requesting equitable distribution of marital assets." Marcus's lawyer stood nervously. "Yes, Your Honor, my client believes he's entitled to half of all assets acquired during the marriage, including any inheritance received during the marriage." Judge Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Inheritance is typically considered separate property in this state, Counselor." "We're aware, Your Honor, but we believe there may be grounds for—" "Let's hear the evidence first. Mrs. Carter Williams, present your case." Tanya was magnificent. She started with the affair, laid out 2 years of documented meetings, hotel receipts, photographs, showed the emails where Marcus and Patricia discussed their plan, read passages out loud in a clear, steady voice that made every word land like a hammer. "The old man can't live forever. Once he's gone, Destiny gets everything. I've been setting this up for 8 years. Marcus's face went red. His lawyer was scribbling furiously, looking for something, anything, to object to. Then Tanya moved to the financial fraud. She showed the bank statements. The $34,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, the credit cards opened in my name without my knowledge, the hidden debt totaling $127,000. Mr. Williams systematically defrauded his wife over the course of their marriage, Tanya said. He stole money from joint accounts, committed identity theft to open credit lines in her name, and accumulated massive debts that he hid through careful manipulation of their financial records. She presented spreadsheet after spreadsheet, transaction histories, credit reports, tax returns showing Marcus's actual income versus what he told me he earned. Mrs. Carter Williams is a forensic accountant, Your Honor. When she began investigating her husband's finances, she discovered a pattern of deception spanning their entire marriage. Judge Henderson was taking notes, her expression growing darker with each new piece of evidence. "And the inheritance?" she asked. "What's the status of that?" Tanya pulled out the will. Mrs. Carter Williams's father, James Carter, passed away recently. He left his entire estate to his daughter with explicit provisions protecting it from any claim by her spouse. The inheritance is held in a trust administered by independent trustees. Mr. Williams has no legal access to any of these funds. Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer interjected. We believe these trust provisions are unusually restrictive and may have been enacted under undue influence. Sit down, Counselor. Judge Henderson's voice cut like a knife. James Carter had every right to structure his estate however he wished. The provisions are legal and binding. Continue, Mrs. Carter Williams's counsel. Tanya smiled, a small, satisfied smile. Finally, Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud. She pulled out the email printouts, the communications between Marcus and Patricia discussing their plan to manipulate me into commingling assets, then filing for divorce to claim half. Once he dies and she gets the money, I'll get her to transfer assets to our joint accounts, then file for divorce. She'll be too devastated to fight. Your Honor, this wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just financial misconduct. This was a calculated, years-long scheme to defraud my client out of her inheritance. Mr. Williams never loved her. He targeted her specifically because of her father's wealth. He waited 8 years for his payday, and when her father passed, he began executing his plan immediately. Tanya paused, let the weight of her words settle over the courtroom. We're not asking for equitable distribution, Your Honor. We're asking for justice. My client wants nothing from this man except to be free of him. She asks only that the court recognize this marriage for what it was, a fraud from beginning to end. She sat down. The courtroom was silent. Judge Henderson turned to Marcus's side of the room. Mr. Williams, do you have anything to say in your defense? Marcus stood slowly. His lawyer tried to pull him back down, but Marcus shook him off. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I admit that. But I did love Destiny. I do love her. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I made some bad financial decisions, but I'm not some kind of con artist. I'm just a man who messed up. A man who messed up? Judge Henderson's voice was ice. Mr. Williams, I've reviewed emails where you refer to waiting for your father-in-law to die so you could access his money. I've seen evidence of systematic theft from your wife's accounts. I've seen documentation of identity theft, hidden debt, and a conspiracy to defraud. This isn't messing up. This is criminal behavior. Marcus's face went pale. Criminal? I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for review. Based on the evidence presented today, you may be facing charges including fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. His lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, my client. Your client should have thought about consequences before he spent 8 years planning to steal from his wife. Judge Henderson shuffled her papers. As for the divorce itself, it's granted, immediately. She looked at me for the first time. Her expression softened slightly. Mrs. Carter-Williams, I'm sorry for what you've been through. No one deserves to be deceived by someone they trusted. The court finds that this marriage was fraudulent from its inception and therefore awards you sole ownership of all assets in your name, including the marital residence, all vehicles, and all financial accounts. Your Honor, Marcus's lawyer protested. Mr. Williams contributed virtually nothing to this marriage financially. He stole from his wife, lied to her for years, and conspired to take everything she had. He's lucky I'm not ordering him to repay every dollar he took. She turned back to me. Your father's estate remains protected under the trust provisions he established. Mr. Williams has no claim to any portion of that inheritance now or ever. But what about me? Marcus's voice cracked. What am I supposed to do? I have nothing. Judge Henderson looked at him with contempt barely concealed behind her professional demeanor. You have exactly what you came into this marriage with, Mr. Williams. Nothing. Perhaps you should have considered that before you built your entire life plan around defrauding an innocent woman. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. I sat there for a moment, not quite believing it was over. 6 years of marriage, 8 years of lies, all of it dissolved in a single morning. Tanya squeezed my hand. We did it, girl. We did it. Aunt Robin was crying in the gallery. Deacon Morrison had his head bowed in prayer. Nicole was already texting updates to everyone who needed to know. And Marcus just sat there, staring at nothing. His whole world collapsed around him and nobody left to blame but himself. I stood up, smoothed my red dress, and walked out of that courtroom without looking back. The war was over. I had won. The weeks after the divorce were like watching a house of cards collapse in slow motion. Marcus had 30 days to vacate our home. My home. The home I'd paid for with my paychecks while he pretended to be building a business. He tried to negotiate, tried to get more time, tried to convince my lawyer that he needed just a few more weeks to find somewhere to go. Tanya shut him down every time. Your client had 8 years to plan for his future, she told his lawyer. He chose to spend that time planning to steal from mine. He can figure out housing in 30 days like everyone else. I was staying at Aunt Robin's house during the transition. Didn't want to be under the same roof as Marcus any longer than necessary. Every day I drove by my house to make sure he wasn't destroying anything, stealing anything, or trying to hide assets I hadn't found yet. Day 15, I pulled up to find a moving truck in the driveway. Marcus was carrying boxes out to the truck. Just him, no help. No friends, no Patricia rushing to assist her man. Just Marcus alone loading his belongings into a rental truck that was way too big for what little he actually owned. I parked across the street and watched. He saw me. Our eyes met, and for just a moment I saw something in his face that might have been regret. Or maybe it was just embarrassment at being seen this way, brought low, exposed, everything he'd pretended to be stripped away. He looked away first. I drove off. That was the last time I saw Marcus Williams in person, but I heard plenty about what happened to him. The district attorney did open an investigation. Between my evidence and Tanya's presentation in court, they had more than enough to move forward. Marcus was charged with fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. He couldn't afford a real lawyer, had to rely on a public defender again, pled guilty to reduced charges to avoid trial, got 18 months in county jail and 5 years probation. 18 months. For 8 years of lies and hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraud. The justice system is imperfect, but at least he didn't walk away free. Last I heard, he was serving his time at a minimum security facility outside the city, probably telling anyone who'd listen that he was the victim, that his crazy ex-wife set him up, that he didn't do anything wrong. That's what men like Marcus do. They never take responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Always some excuse, some justification, some way to spin the story so they come out looking like the good guy. But the truth has a way of following people, and Marcus Williams would never outrun what he did to me. As for Patricia Hayes, her downfall was almost as satisfying. The day after the divorce hearing, I filed a complaint with the State Bar's Paralegal Certification Board, detailed everything she'd done. The affair with a client's family member, the unauthorized access to confidential estate files, the conspiracy to commit fraud using information obtained through her position. Her firm launched an internal investigation. Within a week, she was terminated. Not just fired. Terminated with cause, which meant no severance, no unemployment benefits, and a permanent mark on her professional record. But it got worse for her. See, I'm a forensic accountant. And when I traced the money Marcus had been sending her, I found something interesting. Some of those payments were made from accounts I didn't know about. Accounts that technically belonged to me because Marcus had opened them using our joint assets, which meant Patricia had received stolen funds, knowingly received stolen funds based on the emails discussing their plan. I filed a civil suit. Tanya handled it. We sued Patricia for the return of every dollar she'd received plus damages for emotional distress plus legal fees. She tried to fight it. Tried to claim she didn't know the money was stolen, tried to paint herself as another victim of Marcus's manipulation. The emails told a different story. Her father is worth over $8 million. Just play the loving husband until it's done. Then we disappear. Hard to claim innocence when you're on record discussing the scheme. Patricia settled out of court, paid back every penny plus $20,000 in damages. Had to liquidate her savings, sell her car, move out of that fancy apartment Marcus had co-signed. Last I heard, she was living with her mother in a small town outside Augusta, working at a grocery store because no law firm would touch her with a 10-foot pole. The woman who thought she was going to be living on a beach in Brazil counting my money ended up scanning groceries for minimum wage. Karma doesn't always work, but when it does, it works beautifully. And then there were the ripple effects. Word got out in our community about what Marcus had done. You can't keep secrets in black neighborhoods. The church mothers talk, the barbershop debates, the salon whispers. Within a month, everyone knew the story. Marcus's reputation was destroyed. The man who used to walk into Greater Hope Baptist like he owned the place couldn't show his face there anymore. The few times he tried, people literally turned their backs, refused to shake his hand, moved to different pews. Deacon Morrison made sure everyone knew the truth, not out of malice but out of protection. He didn't want anyone else's daughter getting caught by a man like Marcus. "The devil came to our community wearing a good suit and a wedding ring," he told the congregation one Sunday. "Let this be a lesson. Not everyone who says, 'Lord, Lord,' is walking with the Lord. Watch how people treat the least among us. Watch how they handle money. Watch how they act when they think nobody's looking." I wasn't there for that sermon, but Aunt Robin recorded it on her phone, played it for me later that night. I cried. Not sad tears, grateful tears. For a community that had my back. For a church that chose truth over appearances. For a father who saw the danger coming and spent his last months preparing my defense. The final piece of Marcus's downfall was financial. Remember those debts he'd accumulated, the $127,000 in credit cards, loans, and gambling losses. Those didn't disappear just because we got divorced. But here's the thing about debt. When you can't pay it, it goes to collections. And when collections can't get you to pay, they sell the debt to other companies. Pennies on the dollar. I bought Marcus's debt. Through a financial services company Tanya connected me with, I purchased every outstanding obligation Marcus Williams owed. Credit cards, personal loans, everything. Paid about 12 cents on the dollar. Roughly $15,000 for the whole portfolio. Which meant Marcus now owed me $127,000. The man who spent 8 years trying to steal my inheritance now legally owed me more money than he'd ever see in his lifetime. I wasn't planning to collect. Not really. I just wanted him to know. Wanted him to receive those letters from the collection agency with my name at the top. Wanted him to understand that the woman he tried to con now owned his failures. Every month a statement arrives at whatever address he's at, showing the balance owed, showing the interest accumulating, showing that Destiny Carter is his creditor now. He'll never pay it off. He'll die owing me money. And every time he sees that statement, he'll remember what he did, what he lost, what he could have had if he'd just been an honest man. That's not revenge, that's justice. And justice tastes sweet. 6 months after the divorce, I barely recognized my own life. I was back in my house. My house. No ghost of Marcus lingering in the corners. No memories of lies poisoning the air. I'd repainted every room, bought new furniture. Ripped out the carpet he'd picked and replaced it with hardwood floors like I'd always wanted. The bedroom where he used to sleep next to me, planning my destruction. Now it was my sanctuary. Soft gray walls, white linens, fresh flowers on the nightstand, a space that was entirely, completely mine. I started therapy, found a Black woman therapist named Dr. Keisha Williams who specialized in betrayal trauma. Every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I sat in her office and unpacked 8 years of lies. "You're not crazy for not seeing it," she told me in one of our early sessions. "Predators like Marcus are skilled at what they do. They study their targets. They know exactly how to present themselves. The fact that you were deceived doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you were dealing with a professional manipulator." That helped. More than I can say. Because the hardest part of healing wasn't the anger. The anger was easy. The anger kept me moving, kept me fighting, kept me focused on justice. The hardest part was the shame. Shame that I'd been fooled. Shame that everyone knew. Shame that I, a forensic accountant who catches fraud for a living, had been running a fraud in my own home for years without noticing. Dr. Williams helped me work through that. "Shame wants you to believe you deserved this," she said. "It wants you to think you were somehow responsible for another person's choice to harm you. But that's a lie. Marcus made his choices. You made yours. His choices were to deceive and steal. Your choices were to love and trust. Which of those choices is something to be ashamed of?" When she put it that way, it seemed obvious. Loving someone isn't a weakness. Trusting your partner isn't a failure. Those are the things that make us human. The failure belonged entirely to Marcus, who took something beautiful and used it as a weapon. I learned to stop blaming myself. Learned to stop replaying every moment of our relationship looking for signs I should have caught. There would always be signs in hindsight. That's how hindsight works, but I couldn't have known. And beating myself up for not knowing was just another way of letting Marcus win. So I let it go. Not all at once. Not completely. Healing isn't a light switch you flip. It's a dimmer that you adjust slowly over time, until one day you realize the darkness isn't as heavy as it used to be. But I let it go enough to start living again. Work became a sanctuary instead of an escape. I threw myself into cases with new energy, got promoted to senior partner at my firm, started mentoring younger accountants, especially the women, teaching them to trust their instincts and follow the money wherever it led. Numbers don't lie. I'd tell them, echoing my father. People do. Your job is to find where the numbers and the lies intersect. I took over my father's real estate business, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Wanted to learn what he'd built. wanted to understand his vision, wanted to carry on his legacy in a way that would make him proud. Aunt Robin and Deacon Morrison helped me transition into the role. They'd been managing things since Daddy died, but they were happy to step back as I stepped up. "Your father always knew you'd take over someday," Aunt Robin told me. "He used to talk about it all the time. Said you had his head for numbers and your mama's heart for people. Said you'd be better at this than he ever was." I cried when she told me that. Good tears, healing tears. The business grew under my leadership. I acquired 2 new properties in the first year, renovated a building that had been sitting vacant for a decade, created affordable housing units for families who needed them. That's what Daddy would have wanted. Not just making money, but making a difference, building something that mattered. The sister circle became my lifeline. Every Sunday, Tanya, Nicole, Aunt Robin, and I had brunch together, sometimes at someone's house, sometimes at a restaurant. Always with good food, strong coffee, and honest conversation. We talked about everything: work drama, family foolishness, men we'd dated, and men we'd learned to avoid. The brunch became a ritual, a sacred space where we could be ourselves without pretending. "You know what I love about us," Nicole said one Sunday. "We tell each other the truth, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. None of that fake supportive stuff that lets people walk into disaster. We actually look out for each other." She was right. These women had saved my life. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. They'd been there when I discovered the truth. They'd helped me build my case. They'd held me when I cried and cheered when I won. That's what real sisterhood looks like. Not just showing up for the good times, but carrying each other through the fire. Church became different too. I still went to Greater Hope Baptist. Still sat in the same pew I'd sat in since childhood. But my relationship with faith had changed. I used to pray for things. For Marcus to be a better husband. For our finances to improve. For God to fix whatever was broken in my marriage. Now I prayed differently. Thanked God for the strength to survive. For the Father who protected me even after death. For the community that caught me when I fell. Mother Ernestine, the oldest woman in our congregation, pulled me aside one Sunday after service. "Chile," she said, "I've watched you since you were a little girl running around this church in your Sunday best. Watched you grow into a woman. Watched you marry that man." She shook her head. "I had my suspicions about him from the start, but it wasn't my place to say. Now I watch you rebuild yourself, and I want you to know something." She took my hands in her wrinkled ones. "Your father would be so proud. Not because you won. Not because you got your money or your house or your revenge, but because you did it with grace. You didn't become bitter. You didn't let what he did turn you into something ugly. You stayed who you are even when it would have been easier to burn everything down." I hugged her so tight. Let her wisdom soak into me. Hurt people," she continued. "But healed people heal people. You're going to help someone with this story. Some woman out there needs to hear what you went through and how you came out the other side. That's the purpose in your pain. Don't waste it." I thought about that a lot in the months that followed. My story wasn't just mine. It belonged to every woman who'd ever been deceived by someone she trusted. Every wife who'd discovered her husband's hidden life. Every daughter who'd lost a parent while dealing with betrayal. If my pain could help someone else, then maybe it wasn't wasted after all. Maybe that was the gift hiding inside the grief. 1 year after Daddy died, I visited his grave. Brought fresh flowers, his favorite kind. Sat on the bench beside his headstone and talked to him like he was still there. "Hey, Daddy, it's me, your little detective." I told him everything. The divorce, the court case, Marcus's downfall, Patricia's disgrace, all of it. "You saved me," I said. "That letter, the evidence, the will provisions. You spent your last months making sure I'd be okay. And I am okay, Daddy. Better than okay. I'm stronger than I've ever been." The wind picked up, rustled the leaves on the trees above me. It felt like a response. "I'm running the business now. Aunt Robin says I'm a natural. I'm trying to build it the way you would have. Not just for profit, but for people. Creating something that matters." I wiped tears from my cheeks. "I miss you every day. Every single day. But I know you're watching. I know you're proud. And I promise I'll never forget what you taught me. Trust your gut. Follow the numbers, know your worth, and never let anyone make you feel small. I love you, Daddy. Rest easy. Your little detective has everything under control. I left the flowers and walked back to my car. The grief was still there, would probably always be there, but it had transformed into something bearable, something that lived alongside the joy instead of drowning it out. I was going to be okay, more than okay. I was going to be everything my father raised me to be. 2 years later, I'm sitting on the back porch of my house watching the sunset over the city my father helped build. There's a glass of wine in my hand, jazz playing softly from the speaker. A peace in my heart that I never thought I'd feel again. Everything is different now. I expanded Daddy's business to $12 million in assets, doubled what he built, created a scholarship fund in his name that's already helped 47 first-generation college students pursue their dreams. Every graduation season, I get letters from young people telling me how the James Carter Scholarship changed their lives. That's his legacy now. Not just buildings and bank accounts, but people, lives touched, futures made possible. My career is thriving. Senior partner at one of the most respected forensic accounting firms in the Southeast. I've been featured in industry publications, asked to speak at conferences, consulted on cases involving millions of dollars in fraud. Every time I expose a con artist, every time I trace hidden money back to someone who thought they'd gotten away with it, I think of Marcus. Think of how close he came to getting everything. And I work even harder to make sure nobody else succeeds where he failed. The sister circle is still going strong. Tanya got remarried last spring to a good man who treats her like gold. Nicole got promoted to VP of Human Resources at her company. Aunt Robin finally took that trip to Ghana she'd been talking about for years. We still do brunch every Sunday, still tell each other the truth, still hold each other up. I started a support group for women going through divorce involving financial abuse. We meet twice a month at the community center. Women who've been where I've been discovering that the person they trusted was stealing from them, lying to them, using them. I share my story, show them how I built my case, teach them what to look for in their own finances. Give them the tools I wish someone had given me before I figured it out on my own. Numbers don't lie, I tell them. If something feels wrong, start following the money. The truth is always in the numbers. Some of them cry, some of them thank me. All of them leave with more hope than they came in with. That's what Mother Ernestine meant. Healed people heal people. My pain became someone else's pathway out. As for Marcus, I heard he got out of jail about 6 months ago. Probation for 5 years. Working some dead-end job because nobody will hire a convicted fraudster for anything requiring trust or money. He tried to contact me once, called from a blocked number, left a voicemail. Destiny, it's Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I made mistakes. I was stupid. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. If you ever wanted to talk, maybe get coffee or something? I don't know. I just miss you. Miss what we had. I deleted it without responding. Miss what we had. We never had anything. What he misses is the meal ticket, the comfortable life, the woman who paid his bills and believed his lies. He doesn't miss me. He misses what I provided, and that's not something I'll ever give anyone again. I date now, carefully, slowly, with walls that I'm not ashamed of anymore. There's a man named David. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months. He's a pediatrician at Children's Healthcare. Divorced, no kid's honest about his past and present. First date, I told him everything. About Marcus. About the fraud. About what I'd been through. Figured if he couldn't handle the truth better to know up front than waste my time. He listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "So you're a forensic accountant who caught her own husband committing fraud, took him to court, and won?" "Yes." That's the most impressive first date story I've ever heard. I laughed. First real laugh I'd had on a date in years. David doesn't want my money. He has his own. Doesn't want to be taken care of. Takes care of himself just fine. Doesn't try to control anything or insert himself into my finances. He just wants my company, my conversation, my time. That's what healthy looks like. I'd forgotten. We're taking it slow. No rush. I'm not trying to fill any void or prove anything to anyone. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll be fine on my own. Because that's the most important thing I learned through all of this. I don't need a man to complete me. I don't need a partner to be whole. I am enough all by myself exactly as I am. A man should add to my life, not subtract from it. Should support my dreams, not scheme for my assets. Should love me for who I am, not what I have. My father taught me that. And it took losing him and almost losing everything else for the lesson to finally sink in. So here I am, 2 years later, sitting on my porch, drinking my wine, watching my sunset, living my life on my terms, nobody else's. And if you're listening to this, if you made it this far, I need you to hear something. What happened to me could happen to anyone. I'm a forensic accountant, a professional fraud investigator, and I still got played. That's not because I was stupid. It's because I was human, because I loved, because I trusted. There's no shame in that. The shame belongs to the people who abuse that trust, who see love as a weakness to exploit, who spend years building lies while we're building lives. If you're in a relationship that feels wrong, trust your gut. Start paying attention to the money. Check accounts. Review statements. Look for discrepancies. The truth is always in the numbers even when everything else is a lie. If you discover you've been deceived, don't panic. Document everything. Find a lawyer. Build your case. Reach out to people who love you and let them help. You are not alone. You are not stupid. You are not worthless. You are a woman who was targeted by someone who saw your light and wanted to steal it. That says everything about them and nothing about you. My father spent his last months protecting me because he knew I couldn't see the danger. He gave me evidence. He gave me protection. He gave me the truth. Not everyone has a father like that. Not everyone has a letter waiting in a safe deposit box. But everyone has the ability to pay attention, to ask questions, to follow the money, to trust themselves when something feels wrong. That's what I want you to take from my story. Trust yourself, protect yourself, know your worth, and never ever let anyone whisper sweet lies into your ear while they're planning to steal everything you have. Marcus Williams thought he was smarter than me, thought he had it all figured out, thought 8 years of scheming would pay off in a fortune and a beach in Brazil. Instead, he got 18 months in jail, a criminal record, and a debt he'll never pay off owed to the woman he tried to destroy. Meanwhile, I got my freedom, my fortune, my future. Everything he planned to take from me, I kept. Everything he thought he'd walk away with, he lost, because Daddy raised a fighter. Daddy raised a detective. Daddy raised a woman who knows how to find the truth and use it as a weapon. My name is Destiny Carter. I'm 38 years old, and I'm living proof that the con artist doesn't always win. Sometimes the target becomes the hunter. Sometimes the victim becomes the victor. Sometimes the woman who was supposed to be too devastated to fight turns out to be the most dangerous person in the room. If you're going through something similar, I see you. I believe you. And I need you to know that there is another side to this. There is a life waiting for you beyond the lies. There is joy after the betrayal. You just have to fight for it. You just have to trust yourself. You just have to remember who you are. At my father's funeral, my husband whispered something that broke me, but the breaking wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. And look at me now. If you needed this story today, I'm glad you found it. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Let me know if this reached you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your grief is temporary. Your strength is forever. Daddy raised a fighter, and so did yours. Peace.